Meeple Talk! Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Adam.
And welcome to Meeple Talk. So this week we've got...
Honshu.
Ooh. And I apologize if I'm going to butcher this name, but we've got it. The actual game creator is Kalle Malmioja, Renegade publication for the English version. So the English version was released in 2017.
Yes, and this is a game from Finland. The publishers are from Finland. This game is very popular in the European market and was brought to the US market. And it's a very interesting and simple card game. Where you play a lot of cards and you build your little province, and it's quick to play, and we're going to tell you more about it.
Exactly. So it's a little bit of map building, a little bit of or trick taking, I guess you could say. But yeah, let's check it out. So this is the base layout of Honshu. So not a lot when it comes to components themselves. First, we start here. These are going to be the turn order cards that will determine, I guess, the card playing or trick keeping initiative. Every player is also going to have, as their starting point, their own province card, off of which you'll see here in this province being developed, all the other cards are then going to stem and build from. The building or map cards themselves, well, that's what this deck is for. So here you'll see that there are various landscapes with numerical values, and it's going to start with your original hand to begin with, and then later come into your board as you play out. Also, there are going to be resource tiles as you build. There's going to be different factories or production zones that you're going to be either collecting these resource cubes or expending them for other benefits that Adam is going to describe later. Also, just to keep handy track of your scoring, we've got the extra notepad that will just score based on the various components or variations on what you can build your score on. Also, to help guide you, a handy reference card just for what type of landscape areas are going to earn certain points throughout the game. Also, to keep things a little bit varying from game to game, we also have our optional objective decks. So they're going to have different maybe configurations or things that you might need to satisfy and what kind of extra or variable points you're going to get based off of those. Now, for a moment, I just want to take a quick moment to describe the actual map cards themselves, because they're going to be differentiated by, well, zones. You've got your town squares, your deserts, lakes, forests, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the ones with the stars as well as the square shape. That's going to represent your factories, your production zones, as well as the later factories you're going to be delivering these kind of cubes to. So not a whole lot in the actual setup. It's pretty a simplified game when it comes to overall components.
So at the beginning of the game, one of these endgame scoring cards will be played out. This is described as optional in the rules, but you will probably always play with it once you start it because it's cool. So basically every player then has the option, if they can make this configuration on their province, they will get this many extra points in addition to any other points you can score. So that's how that works. So that one is played out, and then the order of the beginning hand is determined. These are played out randomly, and then each player will then be dealt out 6 cards, which they will keep hidden. So these different province cards have different numbers on them from 1 to 60. And that's important because that will determine the order in which players get to choose their cards. So the first thing all the players will do, based on their turn order, they will play out their cards. Whichever card that they want to play for the first round, and everyone will play out a card. So all of those cards, once they're played out, you will look at the numbers. Whoa, that doesn't come from there. We'll just say this player played this card. Then you'll look at all the different numbers, and you'll see that, for example, 37 is the highest number. So the player who played that card out now gets to choose one of these 4 to put into their province. So there's kind of a two steps to that particular playing phase. So then that player for the next round then becomes the first player to play out the next card. And that player can then choose any of these cards, and then they can add it to their province somewhere. And I'll explain that in a second. And then every other player then will choose a card, and then all those cards will be added to their province. So every player always has the same number of cards in their province. Now, how is a card added to your province? Well, the rule is that you can actually push this under or put it on top of some of your other cards that pre-exist. And one card is the province card starts in the center, and everything plays out from it. So everything has to be connected. So you have to cover at least one square, or be on top of one square. You can also do something like this, where you cover most of it, or you maybe cover the half. So, or you can put it on top. The only rule about that is if you have, for example, a lake on your card, you cannot hide the lake. The lake always has to be showing, no matter where you put it. So then you'll add it to your province, and then the next round will begin. Players will then use another one of their cards until they've done that 3 times. So then 3 cards will be played out. Then everyone will take their hand and distribute that to the player to the left. And then the balance, the other 3 cards will then be played out one at a time, all according to turn order, which is determined in each round. And then after all 6 of those cards have been played out, players will be dealt another 6 cards, and they will do the same thing again. And after 12 cards have been played, all the provinces are now finished, and then players will then determine what points they got. Now, one other thing to mention is when you play out your card, if it has a production spot, a cube will be taken from the supply and placed on that card. Now, the production spots are related to the factories in the sense that at the end of the game, you can get victory points from your factories if you have a resource on the production spot that you can place of the same color. So, for example, this production can power this factory for 4 points. This production at the end of the game can power this factory for 3 points. So that's how you can score extra points with the production in the factories. One last thing to mention is when you're playing out your card, you can optionally take one of your production that you don't need. I'll put these back here because that's only at the end of the game. You can take one of your production resources and put it on your card. That counts for an extra 60 points. So instead of 22, this card is now worth 82. So then this gives you a chance to be first in turn order, even though your card has a very low number. But you do sacrifice that resource because now that resource is no longer available to you. Once that card is picked up, that resource goes back to the supply again. And that's basically the entire game. And once everyone has played all their cards out, you score, and whoever has the most points wins.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the basic gameplay. Mm-hmm. And so what did you think about the game?
Well, it's okay, I guess kind of funny in the sense that even though the official descriptions talk about it being more like a trick-taking game, it doesn't really feel like it in the sense where a lot of other traditional card games you may play that have that. You envision taking, out of the whole hand, you're scooping all up and somehow accumulating this mass hand that you can work and play with. It doesn't really have that feel. So when you look at it or when you play it, it kind of doesn't really feel like that as the fair description. However, that aside, just as a matter of semantics or technicalities, either way, just as a game for just building your own province, I really enjoy the feeling of that kind of game. It is an interactive game in the sense that you can try to compete with each other to maybe take the card that they want, or maybe try to use your cubes to add value to go first in the initiative or in the turn order. But at the same time, there is a lot of solo elements. So for some people who like the more isolated solo component of building your own scape, kind of like Castles of Mad King Ludwig or other games where you're just kind of working on your own thing. There's not really a lot of cross-interference on your actual build, and that's what I find quite pleasant. So as just like a time-passing game, I would consider it more of a filler game because it's not very involved. 12 cards in total you're going to use. So for that, I find it's quite enjoyable. I could see where maybe some people might think, it feels kind of the same over and over and over again. So I think the balancing it out with the objective cards, especially the ones that try to add value to the type of landscape pieces that are normally of no value or very of low value, can really change your focus on that. But overall, simple design, simple cards, simple layouts. So it's not, the most incredible artistic kind of game, or when it comes to design elements, that's fine. I don't really need that for this particular kind of game because it does give a little bit of a layer of a theme, but I like it just for the overall, the mechanics of it. It's playful. It's enjoyable. So I quite like it.
Yeah, I really like this game. And the reason I like it is that, it's very basic and simple, as Steph mentioned, but when you're building out your province, you have kind of like these different avenues of getting victory points. For example, building your big lake. Once you start to commit yourself to the lakes, you sacrifice other things because in order to keep all of your lakes together, you do have to cover a lot of squares often, or you won't be able to get your big city going. Because only your big city will score in this game. But there are different ways, whether it's the city or the lakes or the collecting your forests or even going for your endgame scoring collection bonus. I find that very interesting. And finally, the factories are really cool because you get these different resources and you're like, oh, I've got this factory, this blue factory, but I've got this yellow resource. I need another blue resource so that I can power that factory at the end of the game. And then sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't get what you want. But if you don't, you can use the cubes that you can't use to get a better chance at a higher bid for the cards, which also is useful. So it's kind of like you're never at a disadvantage. The cards are numbered 1 to 60, and in a lot of games, the higher number means the cards are better, and the lower number means they're worse. But in this game, it seems like they're all the same value in terms of what things are on them. So
like their versatility of being able to use them.
So it makes the strategy a lot more interesting. Sometimes you may want to go last because in the subsequent turn, you will play out your card last. So you get to see what the other two numbers are, whether they're high or low, and you can decide if you want to bid over them with one of the cards in your hand, and maybe they all use their lower cards because they're saving the higher cards for later. So for such a small and simple game, there's a lot of strategy, and I really love games where you build out your own little map, and there's a lot of games like that, but this is so simple. It's like the super simple version of that. Now, the artwork is not, I wouldn't call it spectacular or great. It could be better. It's serviceable. You don't have any...
I think that's the way I was thinking in my head, but yeah.
So you don't, and it doesn't even look Japanese. I mean, the backs of the cards we mentioned, right? Sorta. It's called Honshu. Honshu is the big island in Japan. And the backs of the cards look very Japanese, but the actual layout doesn't look anything remotely Japanese.
Could be anywhere,
But I think the gameplay is really spot on. And I do think that this does have a lot of replayability because you're creating a different map each time. Sometimes you can work on the lake. Sometimes you can work on a different strategy and building up a bigger city, or you might be going after these points. And no matter what you do, you don't feel like the game is over too early. I feel like there's just enough strategy.
I kept forgetting there were 12 rounds. I'm like, what? That's it? That's done? Oh, right.
Well, that's not paying attention, I figured. But I felt like this is a great filler game. I think it's a great game because it has enough strategy to be fun. It doesn't end too soon. It doesn't last too long. And I think that's the reason why it in fact has been a very, very popular game in Europe.
It's just enough.
Yes. And I give this very high marks as a filler game.
So what would be your mark, actually?
I would probably give this a 9.
Yeah. I was going to be just a little bit... I was going to give 8.5. I think I'm going to stick with that for the very same reasons that we've discussed above. And I like how... Because personally, I like puzzly type of games. It's not the type of strategy game where you have that long-term foreseeability about the cards you're going to have. You're really just reacting to the first 3 in your hand and then the next 3 that you're going to get. And then again with the redeal. So a lot of it is kind of reactionary in the moment. And what we didn't mention before is that this map that you build is fixed. Once you plant that card, you are stuck with that arrangement. So you really have to try to work with, okay, how am I going to make my new cards work with the current landscape? And I really like that kind of puzzling out ability and see what comes up. So I'd say it's easy to pick up, to teach, transportability. It's a very fun, casual kind of game. So I also, 8.5, that would be my score. I quite give it the thumbs up.
Yep. So that's our review. We hope you liked it. And check out our other reviews on our channel.
See you soon.